Welcome to the Hollywood Scholar. I'm Jed Morgan, and episode 2 of Picard season 2 recently released called Penance. And as I talked about in my last review, I wasn't planning on continuing with this season, but I actually got a really nice fan email who she really asked me quite nicely to bite the bullet for the rest of them, and she very clearly put out why she loved all these characters and why it hurt so much to see them butchered in the way that they are. And so, if it weren't for that email, I would not be doing this right now because I don't really have an interest in the show. But I just want to shout out Elizabeth and say I really appreciate her reaching out to me like that, and it means quite a bit to me that she did that. But nonetheless, it's a show that I don't want to put too much effort into, so these will be very basic reviews, not scripted out beforehand, not edited overly, just kind of real, raw initial thoughts right after finishing the episode type. So they'll be quite simple, but I think I'm going to continue doing that because of that quite nice email. But let's get into it. So, yeah, this next episode, I have some conflicting thoughts on it. I actually do believe it's better than the first episode in a few ways, and the first episode was actually the best of the show, so I think this new episode is actually the best of the show. Though that's not really saying much, like, it would still be the worst of all Star Trek episodes to come prior to Kurtzman Trek and the J.J. Abrams movies, so it's still bottom tier Star Trek, but it's top of the bottom tier Kurtzman Star Trek. They were still empty characters running around just being plot convenience tools. The only one who really had a defined character that was consistent was Agnes, and she was annoying as fuck. And the only consistent thing about her was that she was annoying and nonsensical and still just an idiot, especially with her interactions with the Colonel guy. I don't remember his name right now. The one who was smoking a cigar in the first episode. Their interactions were just so bad. Like, they're in a life and death situation, and she's like, "Oh, why do you have to be so impatient?" And he's like, "We're all about to die." Well, he didn't say that, but he got cowed by her and said, "I'm sorry." But I was like, "You're about to die. He needs you to hurry. That guy did nothing wrong, and he was actually almost a good character. Like, he was one of the topper tier of these bad characters that are in the show. But yeah, he immediately cowed to her. But it was just like, no, he kind of has a good reason to feel the way he's and acting the way he's doing. Like, he's the only one who really acts in general surprise, who reacted best to this alternate timeline per se that the crew of the Stargazer from the first episode find themselves in. And he had some general reactions. He was very much good in this episode, where he really wasn't anything to speak of in the prior one. So I definitely did like his progress that was made in this one. Agnes was even more annoying than she was in the last episode, and yeah, she was just a cunt, honestly, as basic as it gets. But it was a cool concept, and I think that helped carry the episode because everything was related to the new concept. And so character was still pushed to the side, which I'm not a fan of. I like my character moments, and they're quite important. And without character moments, we don't care about the plot as much. But the concept alone was able to carry this. And it is an overused Star Trek concept. But because they went back to the basics, they were able to rely on better writing and fill in the gaps of their shit writing with better instances of same concept being done very well. Because yeah, it's for some reason Q went into the past to 2024 and changed something that's reshaped the future of the Federation into this totalitarian nightmare that actually reminds me a lot of what I've seen of Mao's China. Not that they want that comparison per se, but it's kind of a cool world that they built, as much as Kurtzman can. Like, you kind of feel the xenophobia in a good way. Like, I think they did a lot of things good. It was still a shit episode, I gotta preface that, but compared to everything else, it was a good episode compared to Kurtzman Trek. And you kind of got a feel for the world. You were able to understand what was wrong, what was going on, and it is an overused concept, like I said, but it was executed in a decent manner per se. And Q, of course, he was only in the beginning for a couple minutes, but of course, that actor, he's phenomenal in the role, so his charisma was able to carry my enjoyment for the first few minutes of the episode in a really fun way. Like, he's still trying. That actor really puts in the effort and was really, really enjoyable to see, and I quite enjoyed his inclusion. And Picard, he was still inconsistent in his characterization, and he still wasn't quite the Picard that we knew from TNG and the Next Generation movies. But he still had moments of being the old Picard. Like, he was confident at some points. As soon as he got out of his home, like when he was in his home at the beginning of the episode, he was just kind of like, oh, I don't know what's going on. But as soon as he got in uniform, when he went to the Capitol to meet the president, he was like, all right, I'm going to bluff my way through all of this. He was confident. He knew how to play his psychopathic genocidal general role very well. He was able to fake that very well. And that's very much the old Picard. He was able to see what he needed to do, and he was confident in his abilities to do it, at least for that portion of the episode. So it was nice to see a glimmer of the old Picard confidence, though it didn't last very long. And 709 still had all the same issues that she did prior. And in this episode, of course, it's an alternate timeline, so she was never a Borg, so she had her implants taken out. But she still acts exactly the same as she did prior. For those of you who don't know, they're more than just cosmetic. It's not just a piece of metal that's glued to her eye. Like, there are internal alterations done to her that give her enhanced speed, enhanced strength, enhanced intelligence. With all those gone, she should be suffering quite a bit trying to make up for their absence, and she's still just as smart, just as capable, and that was kind of distracting. I think it would have been a cool character moment. I know Kurtzman Trek doesn't like character moments. It would be a cool character moment or character arc for her to learn how to operate as a normal human without her advantages. Like, she does some math at the beginning and she does it no problem, and it's like, no, I feel like you'd feel an absence of that lightning fast electronic part of her brain being missing. So yeah, I think they really could have stepped that up in the character department, shown a cool thing for her where she's like out of her depth, fish out of water, basically, beyond just, the dimension, fish out of water, and she doesn't even know how her own brain operates anymore. And that could have been really cool, but they skipped right over it. And she's like, oh yeah, it's just glued to her face. It doesn't affect her personality or her brain functions whatsoever. Like, no, they affected it quite a bit. So that was a bit annoying. And just like the last episode, the member berries were quite aggressive, quite over the top. There was literally a room that in Picard's house, it was like, do you remember this? Do you remember Gul Dukat from A Better Show? Do you remember this? Do you remember this? Do you remember this? And it was near constant name dropping, references to old movies. Like, it was getting a little over the top, but they're empty and meaningless. Like, I'm all for nostalgia, but it needs to be used right. It's still it's a neutral tool, nostalgia. It can be used well by writers and poorly by writers, and Kurtzman doesn't have the talent to use it properly. So it was just like, remember this. They weren't integrated into story. Like Spider-Man, for example, No Way Home, it used its nostalgia to build the plot, and it was very integral to it, and it built something new out of it. This one was just like stapled on. It's like, oh, we haven't talked about anything old for a few minutes, just randomly say something. And it was just very jarring every time they came up, and so yeah, it wasn't great. There was still some political messaging. I mean, that's all Kurtzman. He's literally come out and said it's a political platform. Star Trek, he doesn't care about the show. He cares about the political platform. So there's still some of that, some heavy-handed references to climate change and how in this alternate future the humans still fucked up the planet and stuff like that. And it was just over the top and, normal Kurtzman stuff. You can't ignore it per se. And there were a few other things, like what's his bucket, Picard is still a robot, and that still makes no sense. If you were going to make yourself into a robot, why not make a young version of yourself? So that's still carrying over from season 1, but they only mentioned it like once or twice, so I think they're still trying to get away from that concept. And I think with all the time travel that's going to happen, they're still going to make him human in the end, I think, because yeah, that was not a great reaction to it. And speaking of Picard again, at the very beginning, he watches a promotional video of himself, his alternate version of himself, promoting the war, their genocidal tendencies. And I don't know if it was just me, but part of it seemed like he did the pointing. It seemed like the World War II, I want you, Uncle Sam type look. And that felt really bad to me. It's like, so you're talking about what if Yahtzees took over the world and you're a Yahtzee, but you're using American propaganda cliches from the time when we were fighting Yahtzees. And I don't know if that was their intention. Like, it was subtle enough that it could have been on accident, but I felt like they were definitely trying to say, this is what World War II America was like. It's like, no, this is what World War II Germany was like, and America was fighting Germany. So this may or may not have been an actual issue, but I immediately went, oh, they're trying to say, I want you, Uncle Sam. It was just kind of a weird, pulled me right out of the episode type deal. And yeah, pretty much everyone, when they realized that they were in the alternate timeline, no one really reacted super well to it. 7 and 9 especially, she was just narrating all her thoughts while doing stuff that gave the audience the same amount of information. Like at one point, she touches her face in the mirror to see that her Borg implant is gone. We know that she's noticing that her Borg implant is gone. She doesn't need to say, it's my Borg implant, the one that was in my face. It's no longer in my face. Why is that no longer in my face? That was her reaction to the entire thing. It's like, no, we got all that from this. You don't need to spell out why you're touching your face. We got it. We're not stupid. And so her entire reaction was, there were a couple lines that were okay. Like she falls back on her, more computer analytics side. And she's like, all right, test brain function. She does a math equation, which still she shouldn't be able to do, or at least she should have a moment of hesitation because she doesn't have her brain implants yet. And then she's like, all right, test if I can smell. Good. Stuff like that. The analytical part of that scene was okay, but she kept narrating every single thing she did. It's like, we got it. We know what you're doing. And so that was way over the top. And her dialogue throughout the episode was very much similar to that, and just expressing everything that we were already seeing. They were trying to show and tell at the same time, and you don't need to do it in the heavy-handed way that they were doing it. And her character, was just kind of there the whole episode doing everything. And, she was the fundamental one connecting everyone back together because she was the president of the new Confederation. Very subtle there. She was the president, so she was able to get all the Stargazer crew, the main crew, at least back together to talk to each other. And so she was very vital to the plot, but she's just kind of, get him. Are you going to react to this? Are you going to have, emotions? Are you going to be a character? No. Okay, so yeah, that was awful. Patton Oswalt did make a cameo in it. He's just in everything, and as soon as I heard his voice, I got annoyed, but not necessarily a knock on the episode. He was in it for like 2 seconds. Agnes was, again, a complete idiot and just really grinding on my nerves. I hate her so much, God. And that the Vulcan kid, I think we met him in the last episode. I don't remember him prior to that. I don't think they understand what it means to be Vulcan, because Spock was socially awkward, but not in this kid's way. Like, he didn't act Vulcan at all. I thought he was Romulan half the time because he wasn't, Vulcan. He wasn't stiff. He wasn't calculating. He wasn't intelligent. He was just like, I think he's, it's not actually funny. It's like, yeah, I was using sarcasm. Oh, okay. It's like, that's not what a Vulcan would do. So he was really annoying as a Vulcan, but he spent half his time just holding on to Raffi's coattails and saying, you're doing great, Raffi. You're so smart, Raffi. It's like, this character benefited the story not whatsoever. Like, if you took this guy out, nothing would have changed except some nonsensical narration while Raffi was doing stuff. It's like, oh, you're so smart, Raffi. Raffi's like, I know, I'm being smart. Shut up. You're so smart, Raffi. You're so smart. And so, yeah, the two of them together was just agonizing to listen to. Oh, God. Yeah, so the characters were still shit. Pretty much all the characters were still shit. The Colonel did make some improvements, like I mentioned, and Picard had some glimmers of the old self, and Q was, that was mainly the actor who made that good because he's just phenomenal. So the concept is what really carried it for me. Like, it was a cool concept, and they showed scenes that made you understand the world. They didn't just say totalitarian future, even though they did like 4 or 5 times. They still showed you why it was, showed you, mistreatment of citizens, and, it did better than Kurtzman, I would have expected from Kurtzman, to show a world in depth without constant, just saying how it is. The show don't tell. They still told the whole thing, like I was talking about in the 7-9 part, but they still showed quite a bit of it, and that I did appreciate. They made you believe that this world existed. It's not like they were just in a room. It's like, oh, out there it's totalitarian. Okay, is that, like, how bad are we talking? No, they went to some effort, per se, to show this future. I still would rate it at the very bottom of normal Star Trek, but at the top of Kurtzman Trek. I didn't find myself wanting to tear out my hair this time as I have in the past with Kurtzman Trek. So I'd give it a decent okay. Like, there's not really much beyond what I have talked about to say about it. So I don't know. It was just kind of there, really. That's kind of all you can say about it is it was there. Like I don't regret watching it like I have prior, so that's definitely an improvement. But I think I'm still going to do these reviews once a week in this kind of low key fashion, just spitballing right after watching the episode, more initial reaction type stuff, more than a scripted review like I normally would do in situations like this. And it's only because of Elizabeth, so shout out to her again for sending me that quite nice email. But that's all I have for today. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Anon. If you like what I do here and want to see good, compelling stories that Hollywood will no longer give you, check out my book series, Odyssey of a Phoenix, a mythological epic about philosophy, morality, and modern-day mental illness issues. Books 1, Down in Flames, and Book 2, Apocalypse Then, currently on sale. Book 3, Kill the Dark, coming soon.